Thank you very much, Honorable Shivambu.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the section in the Act, the Broadcasting Act, that deals with the dissolution of the board, like verbatim reads as follows: that the National Assembly may, after due inquiry and by adoption of a resolution, recommend the dissolution of the board if it fails in any or all of the following. There are three things. Number one is discharging its fiduciary duties, adhering to the charter, and three is carrying out its duties as contemplated in section 1311. So I think we agree, all of us, that the board has failed to deal with those three aspects which are grounds for removal, for dissolution of the board. I think that we should take a resolution, because that section says that after due inquiry, we'll have to do an inquiry. And I think actually part of what we started today was an inquiry, because we got to question about some of the decisions that they took. We spoke about fiduciary obligations that they have. And then when the National Assembly sits on the 25th of October, we then recommend a resolution by the House that the board should officially be dissolved, and then we then deal with the interim board as is required by the Act, and then we then take it from there. We'll have to, unfortunately, bear some of the pain that has been caused with wrong appointments and all those other things. But we're sure that the interim board can then be able to attend to some of those issues, and then we'll take it from there.
Comrade Floyd.
No, thanks, Chair. You know, in the composition of the board, the Act says that 9 members of the board, which must include the chairperson and deputy chairperson, will constitute the quorum at any meeting of the board. It actually says 9 members. It does not say 50% of members. So there must be 9 warm bodies. And we do not have that now with the SABC, meaning that there is no more a board of SABC that can constitutionally and legally take decisions. Now, the Act does not provide for what should happen when a board has dissolved itself. The Act does not provide for what are the interim measures. I think what we need to do, actually there's no need for an inquiry. Maybe I must withdraw my earlier proposal, because there's no need for an inquiry because the board is non-existent in any way. Let's request the Speaker to convene the National Assembly sitting earlier than the 25th of October in terms of the current program of Parliament, and then would then constitute an interim board as is required by the law. An interim board of 5 that is going to run the affairs until we've interviewed the number that is required for the 12, and then they will then be completed by the remaining ones. The problem is that if we do not do anything now, we're leaving a vacuum. The people who are remaining as appointed board members, they cannot sit to take any decision because they're not legally permissible to do so.
Can you repeat that?
The ones who are remaining now cannot sit and take decisions because they're not legally permissible to take decisions on anything that relates to the SABC, because it requires a minimum of 9 members to take decisions. So the proposal is that let us as a committee request the Speaker to convene an extraordinary sitting of the National Assembly to then take a decision on filling the vacant, like the interim, on putting the interim board, because that is what the Act provides for, that you can put an interim board in place. And then we'll then engage in the process afterward. Actually, the Parliament has been convened before when there were urgent decisions that had to be taken. I remember when we had to be suspended by Parliament as the EFF. A special sitting was convened for that purpose. So now this is a serious issue about saving a public broadcaster that must be attended to as a matter of urgency, that we have to appoint an interim board, and then they will be given a mandate in terms, and it will be easier because once I've got an interim board, let us say next week, Tuesday or Thursday, then we can then give that mandate, a new mandate to the interim board that part of the things that they have to do is to comply with the PP report, deal with some of the transitional issues, we appoint a permanent board that will stabilize management of SABC, and then we have a functional public board.
Honorable Shivambu and then Kalako.
No, Chair, the interesting thing about this legislation is that most legislation that speaks about quorum speak about percentage of members. But this one doesn't say percentage. It says 9 members must be present for a quorum of a board. So it's 9 warm bodies. So we do not have that. So there can never be a board that can take legally permissible decisions in the current form. I think that is the same challenge that we confronted in the previous boards, and then an interim board was put in place. The good thing about an interim board is that we do not follow the long interview processes and applications that otherwise would have to happen when we appoint a permanent board. We'll agree ourselves as a committee that these are the 5 individuals who are going to be the interim board of SABC, and then we recommend to the National Assembly for appointment, and then we commence a process of appointing a permanent board that will include an advertisement, nominations, interview processes, and then a final resolution by the National Assembly on who are the permanent board members. Those are some of the things that we have to deal with in the interim. Now, the last issue I want to deal with is that Parliament is allowed through law to institute a parliamentary commission of inquiry. So we can still do that even in the process of the interim board. And the Parliament, by the way, can subpoena any member of society to give evidence on one issue or another. So we can then say to the previous board members, can we be given explanation on what exactly happened, so that we give guidance to the permanent board that will be appointed after the interim one. So in the process of the interim board being in charge, because decision has to be made, we can then have that parliamentary inquiry, and then we then give concrete recommendations to the permanent